It's not easy waiting for someone else to see this episode with you when it comes out early and you want to see it. But hey, sometimes you gotta make sacrifices for the team, so to speak. Although it is only a mild sacrifice. This is finally my review of Ducktales. Woo! Episode 5, The Terror of the Terra-Firmians. An episode very heavily on mythology gags, so to speak, or in more precise manner, episode that features very heavy references to that one episode from the old DuckTales series. Do anyone who watched this remember an old DuckTales episode where Scrooge had a nightmare about his bin being devoured by huge beagle boys, and it turns out that, well, down there, that was a predictional dream, because we all know that, uh, at least in the comics or in that old series, Scrooge could always feel like when his money was in danger, and even if those dreams were a bit, well, exaggerated, so to speak, he always could feel like when they were in danger. So the most logic solution was to go down there, and then they found the Terra-Firmians. Well, not Terra-Firmians. Well, or maybe they were called the Terra-Firmians. Well, round ball-like creatures that still had a little upper body like that, and they looked pretty adorable looking, but pretty strange as well. They had games, and it turns out that their games were the reason why earthquakes existed. I mean, that is not what this episode is about. In fact, Scrooge and Donald are not seen a single bit this entire episode, once again. Huh. That's pretty strange, but Beakly and Launchpad plays a role here. Although once again this episode is very heavy on Webby. Not that I'm complaining that Webby is getting her own spotlights to shine, but I have to say most episodes have been about Webby nowadays. Has she really become a breakout character that much? Luckily, though, this is actually the first episode of Huey. So after having a long talk, let's talk about this episode. It started with Lena, who's also in this episode, having taken the kids and the two adults to what she said was an educational movie, but it turns out to have been a horror movie. And Launchpad, well, he was pretty heavily influenced by that. And when I mean heavily influenced, he began to worry that is everyone mold people. While in this episode it's revealed that Huey, while a little bit more polite than most of his siblings, is also not exactly an insufferable genius, so to speak, but he is the type of guy that says that if he doesn't believe that it exists in the Junior Woodchuck guidebook, then he will not follow it. So, well, he and Webby begins to have an argument about the fact that he did not like the movie they saw, because for him the many things that happened did not make sense. So yeah, he goes always with a little bit of logic. So and Louis, well, he complained that there was no drama, the heart, and the endless expensive car crash mayhem. So so in order to further prove a point, Webby makes, together with Lena, who is most one influenced, makes Huey go down on a abandoned line that is said to be famous for Terra-Firmians, a line that says closed for renovations, where Webber is, that's exactly what you that they want you to think. Who's they exactly? So well, as they go down further, Huey just keeps showing that the fact that the Junior Woodchuck guidebook holds all the answer. The book knows everything. And Lena makes a joke about that, but chucks the one out of the stairs and down the stairs and says, "Did the book and did the book know I was going to do that?" It is also worth noting that the book even has a page where, well, where Webby mocks when they see rock samples, because apparently Hugh is interested in rock samples. Webby makes a mocking joke by saying, like, well, maybe you should ask your friend the book for help, and it turns out that it even has a chapter on rock samples. And Webby even questions Huey's situation here. You saw Captain Peg look in many strange things, and how can you not believe that? Turns out that Huey has added them in himself, because if there is not something in the Uni Woodchuck guidebook, he will add it, so he knows that it is inside it. Because this episode actually has a little bit of a hidden message inside of it. Turns out that Huey is not exactly a guy who wants to be a know-it-all. Turns out he's actually more afraid of the unknown, which is why he's always so eager to prove that. They get to an abandoned mine, and eventually Beakly and the others, together with Launchpad, who definitely freaks out um, um, about everything else. It turns out that Launchpad is the one who not commits, is the one who creates the most comedy this episode. Even Ms Beakly calls him a man-child, and he begins to say like, "What's a man-child?" It's even worth noting that when Beakly asks Launchpad, "Can you get this train fixed and get us out of here without crashing it?" and then he suddenly makes a doopy face, something like, "What?" This incarnation of Launchpad is a complete and utter dumbass. Also, he is not a he is a complete dumbass. Although I technically should not have said that word in reviewing the Disney's one. Well, either way, the most serious note of this episode is Lena talking with her aunt, who deeply tries to influence her to do that and that, but Lena hesitates. Is she hesitating because of, well, pragmatic villainy, or is Lena secretly getting a soft spot for the ducks and their friends? Who knows? It's pretty difficult to see with those type of villains. But hey, Magica the Spell finally talked. That took quicker than I thought. I thought it would take a couple of episodes before she would talk. She is voiced by none other than Catherine Tate, who also have been on The Who, if I recall. I think she was playing Donna Noble in a Christmas special. So, yeah. I mean, she's talking British there. That doesn't exactly make sense why Lena is not, but hey, I'm not the one to complain about stuff like that. And then finally, as the episode gets more heavy with that, and a Launchpad does indeed crash the train, Lena saves Beakley from a wreckage, showing that she can, with the amulet, get telepathic powers. The guys and the girls do meet the Terra-Firmians, who Webby believed that they were, well, semi rock people who would all compete in competition or trying to free their lost prince. Turns out that, well, they're not people in a civil war. In fact, most of them look similar to each other, except different color on their bodies. But they also are not completely dangerous people. No, in fact, they are just as scared about the ducks as they are for them. And Huey, well, briefly befriends one like that. Turns out that even they have their urban myths about the ducks above. The episode is pretty funny. It's also even funnier that Webby's notebooks about that civil war and the competition and all that is a very heavy nod to the episode of old. So the Terra-Firmians create a path which allows the ducks to finally escape out there. They bid farewell. But Huey, although he admits he is scared of not knowing about everything, just writes down the Terra-Firmians so he knows that's in there. Well, turns out he hasn't learned his lessons. But Magica is not exactly pleased with Lena having shown some, well, emotions here. Again, is she showing emotions, or is she, well, influencing? Who knows? But Magica finally talks, and as usual, a very good voice choice. Although she didn't exactly get to know that who was going to voice. Still, this voice cast do not disappoint in anything else. All in all, a fun episode. Finally, we got a Huey one, and it was just as I predicted. An episode where we're gonna focus a little bit on him, on the Junior Woodchuck guidebook. But again, most episodes so far has been very heavy and webby. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but Webby was not exactly the duck, so to speak. And this also was an episode of Launchpad, who indeed, I mean, this Launchpad is so dumb that some of his jokes are not even funny. Well, he's not joking, but some of his idiocy is not even funny. It's just that, well, the fact that Beakly shuts down his obsession with moles hunting and does that Launchpad, you're not a mole. And then he says, oh yeah, that makes sense. Just further provides the comedy. So yeah, this Launchpad is good-natured and kind, but he is completely dumb as bricks. So again, a funny episode. This review got a little longer than I thought about. But still, what do you think about this episode? And do you think the Terra-Firmians will return? Give me your thoughts if you have any.